Okay, picture this. You've been working on an indie horror game for like 8 months, and it's boring, it's not really that fun, and it just feels like one long fetch quest. How do you make that game good? Well, most people would think of some really complicated fix for this problem, but I just thought of quite possibly the most simple fix ever: add a gun. The game had no combat whatsoever, which a lot of horror games don't, and there's a lot of good horror games that don't have combat. But I knew if I wanted to make the game fun, all I really had to do was add combat. And if the combat's fun, which it's getting there, it will be a fun game. Especially if there are some cool boss fights or cool enemies to fight. And so, that's what we're doing today. This is Phobophobia. It's an indie horror game that I've been working on since February of 2025. And it's a pretty simple premise. Each level is based on a different phobia, a different fear, such as the first level, which is based on arachnophobia. And I've heard recently that I have to, fix that because some people are so arachnophobic they can't play my game. And so maybe I'll add a setting for that. But regardless, each level is based on a different fear. But anyways, most of these levels are as simple as walking around, dodging some enemies, and then doing a puzzle or something. And that's not very fun, and even the less linear levels are most of the time just confusing. And because the game isn't really scary yet, which is just not something we can do without audio, and the game has like 5 sound effects right now, music will be added and stuff, and the game will be scary eventually, but at the moment that's not my main focus. My main focus is making the game fun for everybody. And so adding combat adds something for everybody. Also, it makes so much sense story-wise. You play as a early 2000s US military guy, completely unarmed, makes no sense. And I feel like it's only fair that we do it now that I've gotten requests to add a gun. First things first, I have to figure out how to make a gun in Unreal. And turns out it's a little bit more complicated than I thought. So at first, I thought, this is probably not going to be that hard. All I have to do is make the player hold the gun, then I just need to shoot an invisible line out of this gun, and if it hits something, it needs to damage it. Except for the fact that it's not that simple, because then there's no physics, there's no bullet drop, and it's kind of boring. You're not going to be able to do as much stuff with a simple line trace like that as you would with an actual projectile. The problem with actual projectiles is I have never even tried to mess around with them. Mind you, this is literally the only non-small project I've worked on in Unreal. I don't use AI or tutorials when working on Phobophobia because I want to challenge myself. And so now I have to figure out how to do this. So first I did do a simple trace, and it worked, but it wasn't damaging the enemies, which I didn't really want to fix at that moment. And more importantly, it wasn't very satisfying. I wanted proper projectiles, because that would work a lot better. After configuring a bunch of settings and making it shoot that projectile, it now shoots a gun, and the gun now shoots a bullet, and when the bullet collides with something, it disappears. That's it. Then there's a lot more for me to do. Immediately, I ran into a pretty large problem, which is that the bullet would hit the player. Because it's shooting out of the gun that the player is holding, when it's fired, it shoots and hits a invisible box around the player. Like, it was hitting literally every part of my player. It was really annoying. Eventually, I found out instead of just making it hit anything and then breaking, I could instead have it only hit if it's something that it should be hitting. And it was that simple. So if it hit the spider enemy, it would tell me, oh, it just hit the spider enemy. And it won't ever hit the player. And this fixes pretty much all of the issues with it clipping through and hitting random things. And it also means that if I have a really large box for an item, it's not going to hit that instead of the enemy. And this was good news. I now had a working projectile. And the next step, logically, would be to make it damage enemies. But before that, I just want to quickly say how much I hate animation. Trying to get my player to hold this gun centered was literally impossible. And in some of the clips you're seeing are more recent than others. I'm gonna show off the actual clip from this point in development, probably show it off a bit throughout the video, and it was not great. It was not centered at all, which was the problem. And my friend Jack, who playtested the game recently, hated this and was like, "Oh, your game would be good, but I hate this." And I was like, "All right, I'll fix it." And so I just kind of snapped the arms into the correct position, and now it's centered. But at the time, it wasn't, and this made it really annoying. I got used to it, but I don't want to force everybody who plays my game to get used to it. Okay, so there's now a projectile, a bullet, and when it hits a certain thing that I have in the code, such as the spider or the hound enemy, it then creates a little event, which is, oh, it hit it, so now it's going to damage it. And luckily, there's pre-built-in damage logic, and technically, this is like, it's just damage. There's no health. These enemies didn't have health, which was a problem. But I could damage it a certain amount, and it would take that much damage. And then I could make an event inside the enemies that is, when damaged, any amount, do this. And so when it hits it, it damages it, which then causes another event. And this event will get minus some of its health, depending on how much damage it took. And I also had to implement health and max health, which I pretty much just took from the player and then just copied and pasted it over with some minor changes because I've done the logic once in one thing, so why do it again when I can just steal it? And so I put it into everything else, and then I had health. And so the enemy can take damage and then eventually die. What happens when it hits 0? Nothing. And so I made it do something. I made it so once it takes enough damage, it just disappears. I'll fix that later on, it's fine. But anyways, you can now damage enemies, you can now kill enemies, and that was great. Speaking of animation from earlier, one of the things I had to do to make sure aiming worked, which is something we'll get to in a second, is making the spine bend. And so when you lean backwards, the player actually looks upwards, and its spine is, well, bent. And if you lean forward, the same thing happens. And this allows aiming to work. Before, if you looked up, nothing actually changed except for what direction your camera was facing. Which also made a few issues, like seeing your own head. It ended up helping, is what I'm trying to say. It fixed a bunch of things. So anyways, I threw a random sound effect in there. I would love to go to like a shooting range, get an actual one of these guns, and then record sound effects. It's the Beretta M9. It's a handgun. If I could get actual sound effects, that'd be awesome. But for now, I am stealing royalty-free sound effects from the internet because that's what I've done at every step of this game.